Sometimes, in fiction, there are entire societies that are mostly comprised of queer people. And I like those stories. More broadly, I like stories with characters that are well written, worlds that are rich, and dynamics and backstories that are varied and layered. I love it when art has a meaningful message, and when the personality of the initial creators and their respective creative teams shine right through into these projects. One such project that has had me in a chokehold for quite some time now is Welcome Home. It feels like such a rare and individualized experience, not only because of the format that it takes, a website with ARG elements, but it also rides that line of being a decently popular fandom in internet spaces without bleeding into the mainstream and showing up at Hot Topic. Of course, everyone has their favorite character in any given media. Mine are definitely compare and contrastable when lined up against each other in various ways. They are also typically dead, transgender, suicidal, or a blend of all three. Good thing my favorite character from Welcome Home has no overlapping traits with any of my previous favorite characters. Hey, howdy Pillar from the hit web ARG Welcome Home. You've been really quiet lately. Is there something you want to share with the class? Okay, laying my cards out here immediately. I think there's a reasonable chance that Howdy is transgender, but more specifically, a transgender woman. And there might already be a persistent allusion to Howdy being assigned male at birth. The neighborhood page of the website mentions very specifically how Howdy was born, from an apple core, along with his siblings who were born the same way. The IRL Welcome Home shop released plush versions of each of its colorful cast of characters, one of them of course being Howdy, and his associated flower pin, an apple blossom, which seems to check out as normal, until it doesn't. Our frame of reference for how these flower pins are supposed to look comes from the Welcome Home website itself under the Floriography board game section. Located in one of these images is, again, the apple blossom. Strangely though, it's very green, nearly following Howdy's color palette. So naturally, this begs the question, why the noticeable color change, and why only for Howdy? This is where things get interesting, because we do have an already existing neighborly trans woman, asterisk here because this was unofficial art that is still technically outside of Welcome Home canon, who also has blue apples right outside her home from day one, Poppy. She has a barrel of them right out front. This wouldn't be anything to write home about, haha, but there's been another minor detail like this that has developed over the course of the site updates thus far. Eddie's post office has been subject to an increase in lavender over time, which is decidedly not a coincidence. This means that elements outside of the homes of neighbors may hold later significance, especially if they change over time like this, which brings me right back to the apples and Howdy's bodega. There are two specific elements outside of Howdy's bodega that have changed over time. Firstly, the discount sign in the window. This is actually reflective of the Happy Haunting record, which I'll talk about here in a bit. Then there's the fruit stand, where the fruit is slowly changing color, where again, very notably, the apples have turned blue. This blue apple phenomenon has also escaped containment and found its way onto the IRL Welcome Home shop as well. Each main character so far has had a Buds and Blossom badge. Each respective badge also contains items that are representative of aspects of the characters. On Howdy's IRL Buds and Blossom badge, there just so happens to be yet another blue apple. But not just that. There are specifically blue apples on the fruit stand on the backing for the pin, which is only reflective of recent updates and not the original neighborhood map. To top all of this off, there's a blown-up version of Howdy's name tag on the apple side of the pin. At first I thought, well, they did that so we could see his name tag, otherwise it was going to be covered up by the flowers. Duh. But there's a very curious change to his name tag here. On the tag normally, there's a little caterpillar in the top center. On the Buds and Blossom badge, though, it's a butterfly. So, to quickly recap, Howdy was born from an apple core. All apples around him so far have been inexplicably turning blue. Both of his IRL pins have reflected this change in the Welcome Home website, and may have to do with his later metamorphosis. Poppy also has blue apples outside of her home, which could follow this implied parallel of being assigned male at birth. Speaking of which, I'm gonna need to take a quick aside to talk about pumpkins. We currently have 2 existing trans characters, again asterisk here because this was an official R that is still technically outside of Welcome Home canon, who have had something to do with giant pumpkins so far. Please, for the love of God, stay with me. Frank, who is assumedly mask non-binary, is growing a giant-ass pumpkin in his garden for some reason, and Poppy dressed up as one for Sally's party and Happy Haunting. Now, we get another big-ass pumpkin mention in the Primrella Looky-Loo, where the smallest pumpkin from the garden was transformed into a giant carriage. Too bad we don't have a spare transgender character to pull it.
Primrella's gotta get to that castle, pronto, even if it means carrying this dolled up jalopy myself.
Also, I'm going to bring this up because I'm insane, but Howdy is the only one in his family so far that doesn't have wings by now that theoretically is supposed to have them, which could mean some kind of delay in his metamorphosis. So the fact that the pumpkin goes from a tiny little garden pumpkin to a huge extravagant carriage right at the same time that Howdy also undergoes the effect of the spell could sure be saying something in terms of parallels. Anyway, pumpkins aside, now it's high time that we talk about the costumes in the Happy Haunting record. The costumes here have always been suspicious to me in terms of underlying symbolism for the characters. Eddie's has some more concrete ties between himself and Frankenstein's monster, but the other costumes are a bit more on the speculative side, though I don't think any of them are accidental. For example, Barnaby's might illustrate some kind of Jekyll and Hyde dynamic within his character, which would line up with this.
I got a bloodhound and a whirlwind of trouble and an old reliable dog.
And a few other details so far from the Welcome Home website in general. Don't even get me started on Julie's. I strongly believe that the Floriography game is a bigger metaphor for a ritual that the characters were subjected to, but alas, we have nothing concrete to verify this at the moment. Howdy seems to be entirely exempt from this pattern at a glance, but then we get to the dialogue in the actual recording, and things take a bit of a turn.
I resent that implication. Last year's sheet was off-white. This year's is eggshell white. Everyone is bone tired of the stand-up, so maybe you ought to sit down and give Howdy a crack at it.
Everyone who is here probably knows what I'm about to say. He's just a misunderstood little chicken fetus in an egg that needs to be cracked open. Seriously though, an egg is common lingo in the queer community that refers to a person who either doesn't realize that they're trans yet or is not out yet. When they do realize or they do come out, that is when the metaphorical egg cracks. It's also worth noting the story's progression. Howdy was desperately trying to get rid of the sheet, but in the end felt compelled to wear it.
Available now for only 100% off.
Barnaby patted Howdy on the back as the caterpillar cashier cried into his shoulders. Maybe these stories are starting to get scary.
Sally also notes that Howdy has worn this same shit repeatedly. Sally also notes that Howdy has worn this same sheet repeatedly.
Oh, please. Reusing the same ghost costume from last year, Howardson?
Howdy's quote-unquote spooky story isn't an entirely unattached aside from the overall plot of Welcome Home either. Like I said earlier, Howdy's bodega has actually changed over time to mirror Happy Haunting, albeit inversely.
It had to be clearanced. First 10%, then 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60, until finally it happened. No! That's right. Not 75, not 85, not even 95. This must-have item was marked down 100%. No!
In the first rendition of the neighborhood map, the bodega started out with its standard 100% off sale sign in the front window. Over the course of Frank and Julie's update, though, that sign has gone down from 100% to then 90%, and is currently standing at 80%. Now hold on to your ass tight, because there's more. And this next section partially has to do with eggs again. I'd like to open this section with an Ask That Clown answered on his Tumblr. If Howdy is a caterpillar, does he have the ability to turn into a butterfly? We all have the ability to grow, yes. While this is an intentionally vague answer, it also seems to lean in the direction that 1. Howdy has the ability to change himself overall, and 2. that Howdy indeed can undergo metamorphosis. Again, Howdy appears to be the only one in his family without wings yet who is theoretically supposed to have them by now. So one of two things is likely happening here. One, he's just a late bloomer and will undergo metamorphosis at a later time simply because he was wired that way. Or two, Howdy is either somehow, consciously or subconsciously, stalling his own metamorphosis. If he is stalling metamorphosis, it may very well be just because it's a scary process that ends in some big bodily changes that are like body horror adjacent. Or under that same umbrella of horrors, when he does transform into a butterfly, the changes in question might not exactly be what his family and friends were expecting, or even hoping. But even more pressingly, we gotta address the Buggle toy, which may very well be our first window into Howdy's metamorphosis process. I want to highlight this line specifically. This little creature is plenty cute and playful on its own, but there's still room to grow. Which sounds suspiciously reminiscent of Clown's answer about having the ability to grow. Also, Howdy's IRL Buds and Blossom pin has a color scheme that is very similar to the Buggle instructions page. And then there's the leaf. There are multiple times that Howdy has mentioned leaves on their own, one instance being in a Darling broadcast, and another being in his and Barnaby's secret bug video. The Buggle needs hella leaves to start its metamorphosis, and comparatively, this is something that Howdy would also need to start his own as well. More broadly, there's also the egg, nymph, and butterfly stages that would match up with Howdy's projected life cycle. So in short, I don't think that we were introduced to metamorphosis in the Buggle for no reason, and Howdy is either intentionally or unintentionally putting off his own metamorphosis because of what it will inevitably lead to. Changes that he can't control, and changes that are scary. Howdy has a few men on his shit list so far, that being Eddie, Ladder, and Frank. This is shown in multiple bits of dialogue across multiple audios and videos, but the question is, why? Well, notice anything in particular as a common denominator between these men? That's right, they all have supposed quote-unquote feminine traits that the hypermasculine and probably slightly misogynistic Caterpillar has picked up on! In all seriousness, though, Howdy has again gone as far as gendering his own antenna, which shows how deeply rooted his masculinity is as a part of his identity. So to, I don't know, say, wear a dress, would be challenging that view of himself, and to do or consider anything further than that would absolutely shatter his sense of self. So obviously, this perfectly male caterpillar isn't going to do anything of the sort. He's gonna make Julie wear a dress and be very insistent about it.
Mr. Fox snapped his fingers, and the mouse pulled back the sheets to reveal the party dress of Primrella's dreams. Wha-pow! It's a genuine dress of nothing but the best a poor girl's mucky servant quarters can offer. A potato sack built for a princess. And a bow made of rope on top to add that special little something. Primrella was ecstatic. And who wouldn't be with an outfit like that? Carmela's subjectively beautiful dress turned into a drop-dead, show-stopping, head-turning gown.
Now, color me pink, white, and blue for saying this, but it really feels like a case of, I cannot wear this dress, that would be girly and bad, so you, Julie Joyful, are my target for vicariously living out my feminine dreams.
All that hard work and magic for nothing. Prim, I didn't even get to keep the outfit.
Oh, don't cry, Mr. Fox.
Unable to do more than cry herself silly. Almost makes you a little teary-eyed, too, doesn't it, Mouse?
If you say so.
But the more pressing detail I noticed is that Howdy says this.
It ain't the dress that makes the princess, it's the attitude. Now go get 'em. In fact, put on the potato sack dress. It'll fill you with confidence.
The concept of Howdy saying that the dress that he specifically made for her will fill her with confidence reads a little bit like possible projection to me.
That's right it was. With her newfound courage and show-stopping gown, Primrella stood up to her dastardly sisters right then and there. Maybe it wasn't the sadness I was smelling. You, kid. Where'd you get this potato sack from? The trash can. Hey! It was her first gown. Handmade, I hear. I bet she was on a budget, too. Cut the kid some slack.
Well, I think I've covered about all of my points, so, I think I can wrap this video up early. Wait. wait a second. Wait, what? What is that? I debated on adding this section, but I think someone's gotta say it. So, there are a lot of very strange and disgusting hot dogs in the food section of the Welcome Home website, and I think these have something to do with the plot. Please, for the love of God, stay with me. Firstly, there are foods in this cookbook that don't seem to be isolated jokes. We have the single pea on a plate that also appears in Eddie's Crash Out. We have Julie's Queen's Game Gelatin, which seems to tie into her roles as Princess in the Looky-Loos, and the gelatin that Frank is often, like, making for some fucking reason. Now, according to Barnaby, his usual at Howdy's is a hot dog.
My usual for my usuals? Coming right up, Pally.
The usual. I thought we were getting hot dogs.
That is our usual, little buddy.
So for now, I'm going to assume that the hot dogs here are mostly related to Barnaby, which makes this a very interesting reading experience. Most of the dogs here don't seem to have to do with anything, but if you read into the descriptions and are fucking insane, you start to see some red flags. The relish dog, which would be a callback to Howdy, Wally, and Barnaby's audio with the same phrase that is baked in.
How does Barnaby eat his hot dog?
I don't know. How?
He relishes it.
The dog garnish dog, which could refer to the barking roach and Barnaby. The workman's dog, which could refer to Barnaby and Howdy's friendship. And then we have this page, which I'm going to have to censor the bottom right of because it's not made for public TV. The captions and descriptions go as follows. The cube dog, a dog with a bold new shape. The dog malt, a Barnaby B. Beagle favorite. The hot dog friend, a dog to spend some quality time with. And lastly, it's a dog. There it is. With everything that I previously mentioned in mind, I think that this page is indicative of either Barnaby being transgender or Howdy being transgender. The cold dog malt is the really muddying factor here, as usually malts are associated with Howdy and hot dogs with Barnaby. This thing has both. The hot dog friend is also questionable because while it's a dog, tell me why the bun looks suspiciously like butterfly wings? Not to mention the foreboding it's a dog aspect. There's a grave in Barnaby's backyard, which would seem to suggest that, okay, this is about him again. But then we have the ghost costume with Howdy, and I have to wonder again, who here is transgender? because it's gotta be one of you, right? Or both. That's honestly a possibility too. I'm getting off topic. This page could simply be hinting that either Barnaby has a friend with a bold new shape, or is the friend with the bold new shape. I hope that all makes sense, because I don't have any more dollars. Anyways, I'm definitely open to talking more about characters like Barnaby, and just realistically anybody else. I love all of the characters in Welcome Home. I gotta go. I gotta get this shit edited. So, that's about it for now. Archer Casey, signing off.